In the IELTS speaking test, you are guaranteed to be asked about either your home, your hometown, your neighborhood, your job, or if you study, your studies. So as a result, it's a very good idea to learn useful vocabulary and practice questions related to these common topics. Let's think about how you would describe your home. I want to show you some vocabulary that students have used with me when I've been examining them that has impressed me immensely. One student described their home as being cozy, which means small and warm. Another student described their home as being neat and tidy, a great collocation that means well organized. Another student said their apartment was modern. Another person said spacious, which means big. Another person said light, which means there's lots of natural light coming into their apartment. Now, here's a great phrase. Once I was examining a student in Shanghai and they said, I live in a typical Chinese apartment, and then they explained what that is. A typical Chinese apartment, or you could say a typical Mongolian yurt, or a typical Scottish tenement building. This is a great phrase to use in your IELTS test when describing your home. Perhaps your apartment is cramped, it's very small. Learn some vocabulary to describe where you live. Now, I want to show you some useful phrases as well. You could say, it has great views overlooking the main street, which means from your window, you can see the main street below. What I like best is the proximity to the beach. I live really close to the beach. One thing I don't like is that my apartment is very cold in the winter. I've been living here for 2 years. I've been living here since I moved to Scotland. So we say living here for and then a duration, or since and then a moment in time. So look at these sentences and make them true for you. Do you live in a house or a flat? I live in an old apartment on the outskirts of Edinburgh. I've been living there for the last 2 years. What's your favourite room in your apartment? I'd say the living room. It's a large room and I've got a massive and very comfy sofa. Plus, a couple of weeks ago I bought a projector, so it's great for getting cozy and watching movies. Is there anything you would like to change about your home? Interesting question. I wish my flat were better insulated. It's fine in the summer, but in the winter my flat gets incredibly cold. Actually, a lot of flats in Edinburgh have this problem, as they have high ceilings that look beautiful, but can make it very cold in the winter. Another common topic is to describe your hometown. Here's some useful vocabulary. You could say that your city or your town is a dynamic city, which means it's constantly changing. I used to live in Shanghai in China, and Shanghai is a very dynamic city. It's always moving, people are coming and going, and there's lots of activities. Perhaps your city is bustling with people, which means it's very busy and lots of movement. Perhaps you live in a historic town. At the moment, I live in Scotland, in Edinburgh, and Edinburgh is a very historic city. Perhaps your city is lively, lots of activities going on all the time, lots of concerts, lots of people, lots of exhibitions. Perhaps your city is touristy, which means lots of tourists come. Barcelona is a very touristy city. Perhaps your city is densely populated, a very good collocation, which means there are lots of people in a small space, a densely populated city. Or perhaps your city is very peaceful and very tranquil and relaxing, or even picturesque. Maybe you have beautiful views of the mountains around you. So here's some phrases that you could use for describing your hometown. One thing I like about my hometown is that it's a very old and beautiful city. My city is famous for having a large castle in the center. I wonder if you know which city it is. I've been living here for 2 years. But one thing I would love to change is that the public transport system is so bad. Look at these sentences and try and make them true for you. By doing this now, you'll be better prepared for your IELTS speaking test. Is your hometown a big city or small town? Well, I was born in London, but I actually consider Edinburgh to be my hometown because my family moved there when I was so young. As you might know, Edinburgh is a very beautiful old city, and what makes it particularly special is that it's built around a large castle in the centre. What kind of buildings are there in your hometown? Well, in general, the buildings in Edinburgh are very old. A lot of the apartment buildings were built in the 19th century, so the city has a real old feel about it. Plus, of course, there's the castle in the centre of Edinburgh, which I think was built around the 10th or 11th century. Is there anything you dislike about your hometown? Well, one thing I don't like is the public transport system. In Edinburgh, we don't have a metro or underground or anything like that, so we rely on buses to get around the city. The problem is the streets are incredibly narrow and the traffic congestion, especially around rush hour, can be awful, so it takes a long time to travel across the city by bus. How would you describe your neighbourhood? Would you use vocabulary like this? Is it quiet? Is it safe? Maybe it's close-knit, which means everybody knows each other. It's very local and people know each other. It's a close-knit community. Perhaps it's residential, so there's not that many shops, but there's lots of people living there. Or maybe it's noisy or busy. Perhaps it's close to the beach or close to the city centre. Perhaps your hometown or your neighbourhood is conveniently located, which means it's very easy to get to the city centre or to shops. So again, think of some vocabulary to describe your neighbourhood. Here's some sentence starters you can use. It's full of young families. It suits me because it's a neighbourhood with a very relaxed atmosphere. I wish it were, or I wish it had. So we use I wish and then the past simple. I wish it had more shops. There's not that many shops. If I want to go shopping, I have to go to the city centre. One thing that gets on my nerves is there's always roadworks in my neighbourhood and they're very noisy. Would you say your neighbourhood is a good place for young people to live? Actually, I say my neighbourhood is very good for young families or old people, but maybe not the best for teenagers or uni students. Where I live in Edinburgh is incredibly relaxing and it's next to the sea. It's very local and has a slow pace of life that I personally love. But I think it could be kind of boring for teenagers or young adults as there's not much to do when compared to the city centre. Do you know any of your neighbours? I do. I live in a block of flats and we all share a garden. So over the years, I've met more or less all of them. To be honest, most of them keep themselves to themselves, but occasionally I'll be in the garden and one of them will come down to hang up their washing and we'll chat for a little while. They all seem very friendly. Would you like to live in a different neighbourhood in the future? Well, I don't have any plans to move in the foreseeable future. I don't think I'll live in this area for my entire life, but for now, I like my neighbourhood as it's relaxing and close to the beach. I'd only really move neighbourhood if I bought a flat somewhere or if I had to move for some unexpected reason. If you work, you need some vocabulary to describe your job. In fact, you even need some vocabulary to describe your manager, your place of work, your colleagues, the industry that you work in. So let's think about some vocabulary that could help you to describe different aspects of your job. Perhaps your job is rewarding. For example, if you're a teacher, being a teacher is a very rewarding job. Maybe you've got a flexible job. You can work in the mornings, you can work in the evenings, but you don't have many deadlines. Maybe it's a flexible job. Perhaps you've got a creative job, like being an editor or a designer, or a well-paid job, hopefully. Or maybe your job is monotonous. Monotonous. This means that your job is boring and you do the same thing every day. Or perhaps your job is stressful. You've got lots of deadlines that are difficult to meet. Or demanding. Again, relating to those deadlines, maybe you've got a demanding manager, or perhaps, the worst of all, your job is poorly paid. You don't get very much money. Do you work or study? I work. I'm an English teacher specializing in IELTS preparation. How long have you been doing this job? Well, a long time actually. I started teaching English in Spain in 2013, but I've been specializing in IELTS since around 2016. At first I was working as an IELTS examiner, but now I help students through making video tutorials and online lessons. What skills are important in your work? Good question. I'd say there are a mixture of hard and soft skills that are important to have. In terms of hard skills, I'd say that it's important to be pretty tech savvy, as I have to do a lot of video editing, making quizzes, and updating my website. And as for the soft skills, I'd say that good communication skills and problem-solving abilities are important. Now, if you're a student, whether you're in high school or in university, you need some vocabulary to describe your studies. So I would think of vocabulary to describe your classes, your teacher, your peers, which means the other people that you study with. If you're in university, some vocabulary to describe your university, or if you're in high school, some vocabulary to describe your high school. You could say things like, I've got enthusiastic peers or enthusiastic teachers, which means they bring a lot of motivation. Or maybe your classes are fascinating. You're really interested in what you're learning. Perhaps even your classes are dynamic classes, which means the teachers are very good at making the subject very interesting. Maybe they are motivational. They get you enthusiastic and motivated about the topic you're learning. Or perhaps you've got challenging classes and challenging amounts of homework, or demanding teachers that always set you lots of homework and deadlines to hand in essays. Or perhaps you've got a supportive teacher that really wants to help you. Or maybe again your classes are monotonous, dull, and boring. Do you work or study? I study. I'm doing a master's in machine learning. Why did you choose these studies? Well, I've always been good at maths, and I've heard that graduates with a machine learning degree can earn a good salary, so I thought I'd go for it. Is there anything you would like to change about your studies? Well, to be honest, I'm not super impressed with my teachers. I can tell that they're really smart and capable, but a lot of the time it doesn't feel like they've prepared in advance for the lessons. They often just arrive and read from the textbook instead of having a lesson already planned. I want to set you a challenge before you go. How would you describe your home, your hometown, your neighborhood, your studies, and your job? Now, your challenge is to do this in your own language and then to translate it into English so that you can find the vocabulary that you would use to describe these different parts of your life. And if you're feeling extra motivated, here's a second challenge. What would you like to change about your home, your hometown, your neighborhood, your studies, and your job? The more that you think about these questions now, the better prepared you're going to be in your IELTS test. Best of luck, and I'll see you in the next lesson. Bye.